Okay, welcome to Grue, and thanks so much for taking time out of your day and coming on the show.
Oh, yes. Thank you for having me. This is an honor. I've been looking forward to it all week.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you. I appreciate that. So like the first thing I wanted to ask you is like, what made you want to write and start doing films?
Yeah, you mean besides my narcissism and egotism? I think definitely it's I think being a queer man, gay man, I think this has been a movie that's been kind of lodge itself inside of me, wanting to get out for a really long time. I think I describe my 20s as kind of just like a white hot rage. That's kind of like was my personality at the time. And I was just so angry that the society I was born into, the time I was born into, even living in a very progressive place like the San Francisco Bay Area,
Mhm.
where I was raised, we were not prepared to deal with the immense amount of shame I felt, my family and myself, around being gay, what that meant. I don't know if you remember at the time, if people around the time, that was during the heat of the, you know, marriage equality battles. People in
Yeah.
Congress were talking about if you allow gay marriage, that's like allowing bestiality, that's like allowing pedophilia. Sadly, a lot of those arguments are coming back to today, but I was just so angry that my life, because of this, one quirk in the beautiful biological diversity that is the human species, this one kind of quirk made it so that my whole life would somehow be seen as othered, marginalized, and I didn't feel that way. And so,
Yeah.
to make a long story short, this movie I think is kind of my way of trying to process all of that anger, process all of that shame, and hopefully get people who haven't gone through the same process that but maybe kind of feel the same. I think even if you're like a Kinsey six heterosexual male, there is probably some atypical kink that you have that you never told anyone. And
Exactly.
and we all live under this horrible, antiquated suffering because of sexual shame. And the movie was kind of a way for me to explain that actually life is much more better if we all are open and come out of the closet about everything. So hopefully, people who watch the movie can kind of find that little piece in them that gets them a little braver to come out a little bit about whatever it is that they've always wanted to tell someone.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's funny you said that because one of one of my straight friends, like he he told me what his kink is, and he never wanted his girlfriend to know, and
Oh.
and and it was like I was like, if you just tell her, like she might do it, or she might tell you to go find someone who wants to do it.
It's funny you say that because yeah, I think often gay people, we are the people who the straight people feel comfortable talking to about this, right? Like because we've already told the world like kind of fuck you, this is who we are. And everyone wants that courage. And that's the one thing I didn't anticipate with making this movie. I really thought like this is really for the queer kids. This was really for but straight people have resonated so much with this movie because I think the only thing that is normal is that we're all different.
Yeah,
There is no one set of sexual desires that is normal, right. The thing that unites us all is that we're all different, and to pretend like we're not different, to pretend like the differences isn't what makes it fun is kind of crazy to me. And so I really wanted to make something where a straight, super straight guy or anyone could watch this film and think a little bit about like, yeah, like I try to fit myself into a box that really doesn't exist, and
mhm,
why, and again, just get people to question that.
yeah, and like, what age did you start having like feelings like for other men? Like, what age did you know, like, because everyone, when you're growing up, like your parents, your family, they all want you to be straight, and they want you to have sex with women, not men. And like, what age did you were you like, okay, I don't want the two melons that are on top, I want what's down there?
I think I think it's something that I've always known or been a part of me, but it didn't really crystallize for me until puberty. I think, you know, when the interest in sex and sexuality becomes greater and greater, you realize very quickly that you're different from many of your peers,
Mhm.
different than many of your male peers, and that the reactions they're having towards the opposite sex are different from the reactions you're having,
Yeah.
or similar to the reactions you're having in the same sex. But I would say, you know, I think from a very young age, you know, I was maybe stereotypical, but you know, I wasn't. I was more into Babysitters Club books than basketball. You know, I wasn't as stereotypically kind of boy male as many of my peers, and I think you know, I always have kind of had a stronger gravitation towards boys, men. I think a lot of the the insecurities I had as a young kid, you know, of wanting to be friends with people, are crushes, but I just never processed them
Oh
in
yeah,
that way because no one ever taught me that's what it was. You know, I didn't think about it in that way.
exactly.
But it was clearly a crush I had on boys, and my relationship with boys were much more emotionally fraught growing up. So I think it's something that yeah has been a part of me. And but then of course during puberty it becomes very crystal clear that one form of human body is much more appealing than the other.
Yes, definitely. That's definitely the time it hits.
Yeah.
And I I was reading online like the one person that's part of your film, her name's Kristen,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and you asked her if sex is a want or a need, and she said to you like all humans like that touch, that human touch.
Mhm.
So like how do you feel about what she said, because that is so true. Like every human, no matter if you're gay or straight, they want that human touch.
Yeah, I think skin hunger is something that we are just it is a need much like breathing, eating. Of course, it's not exactly the same. Um, but I think it is, you know, if you just look at studies of babies that are held and babies that are not held, the babies that are not held grow up with a lot of issues attaching to other people, a lot more prone to psychopathy, sociopathy. You know, I think we don't give that skin to skin contact, that connection, that physical connection, as much priority in our lives as I think we ought to. I based on the conversation with Kristen, I think a lot about, again, straight men who, if they aren't partnered with a woman, like how much actual physical contact are they getting
Exactly.
in their lives? And I think it's very little. And I have a lot of empathy because I think sometimes I'm in a group of my gay male friends and we're just talking, but maybe we're a little more intimate. You know, a leg is draped over someone else's lap, we're laughing, we're hugging, it's much more intimate in a way that feels more connected and healthy. And I think a lot of us, for one reason or the other, see that kind of physical intimacy as especially among men,
Mhm.
as something to be afraid of, as something to be stigmatized, or it makes you feel weak, or it makes you look vulnerable in a way that's not good. But I do think, I this is a hypothesis, it's not really a fact, but I do think a lot of issues we see with straight men could maybe be tied back to the fact that they don't get that warm, loving human connection like they need to, and
Yeah.
it causes a lot of stress, anxiety, depression, and the longer that goes, the more problems they have. And I think, yeah, we think of sex as like often as like a frivolous, naughty, dirty kind of pleasure, but I think it's much closer to a need when it comes
Yeah.
to our health and happiness than just simply wanting.
Yeah, definitely does. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like when did you ha- want to come out to your parents, your family, your friends? Like I don't know how strict like your parents are and your family is, and it like every young man or woman that's gay and they start, when they know who they are, like that's the part that stresses them out the most, is how am I going to break the news?
Yeah, yeah, it was terrifying for sure. I think it got to the point, quite literally, that I was either gonna, sorry to kind of bring it down a little, but I was either gonna kill myself if I didn't tell someone. I think the loneliness, the crushing despair of feeling just utterly alone, kind of back to the idea of skin hunger. A human being can only withstand so much of that.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think it was clear to my friends and family that I was really depressed, crying at weird times, not sleeping, not eating, turning to drink and drugs. And so I think there was a little bit of intervention with my friends, who really pushed me to come out to my family, who were just utterly concerned. And I think, you know, I it's not that my parents were, say, religious conservatives,
Mhm.
but I think, especially when you don't know other gay people in your life, and this was a time when this is a pre-Glee world. This is before that, these messages were kind of widely preached on mass media. I just didn't know what it just felt like. If I told my parents, I was blowing my life up in a way that was terrifying, right? So I think, ultimately, it was the best thing I ever did. And I wish I had done it earlier, because my family's reaction was just exactly what you would hope for. They made it all about my well-being. They didn't make it about themselves.
Yeah.
They went out, got me counseling. They went out, found gay people in the community
Oh
for us,
wow.
for us to talk to, and it was a beautiful, beautiful moment. I mean, don't get me wrong, it took a long time for us to work through a lot of our
Well,
prejudices,
yeah, I'm sure.
to work through a lot of our concerns, to work through a lot of issues that we all didn't know how to deal with. Um, yeah, but I think, uh, looking back, coming out, was the start of a long process, and maybe this movie is the end of that process. But it was, shame cannot live in the light, and letting the people in my life know who I am has been terrifying, difficult, stressful, but ultimately, the best thing I have ever done for my health and happiness.
Oh wow. Okay. And like one of the quotes you say that I love, like I saw like numerous things you were in and said. You say sex is fun, which it is. Like, I mean, I I love sex, and anyone who says that they don't love sex is not telling the truth, but they're feeling ashamed about it. So like we we shouldn't be scared to express how we feel about sex, and we shouldn't be scared to talk about it to friends and family, or if you're sitting in a restaurant or coffee shop, you shouldn't feel ashamed to lower your voice. And sex is part of life. And then like another thing is kinks too. Like a lot of people have kinks, whether they want to admit it or not,
Right.
and they're ashamed to tell their kinks to everybody. And so where do you stand on all that, like about being free to talk about sex and kinks and not be ashamed of it?
Yeah, I think that that's exactly how I would frame things. We shouldn't be afraid, but I understand why we are. I think,
Mhm.
there's culturally, I'll try to make this short. I do like to talk, but I think culturally, it serves, the powers that be, the more silent we are about these things, because it becomes that much harder to control. Um, I think it's difficult, and I get why people. There's a difference also between, I think, privacy and shame. I think a great way to describe it is like pooping or picking your nose, right? Those are totally natural, normal human behaviors that you shouldn't be ashamed about.
Yeah.
But to do it in public is a different beast, and the same thing with masturbation, right? Masturbation is one of the most universal sexual behaviors, but
Yeah.
to do it in public is makes people uncomfortable for good reason, right? So that's something you should do in private. So I think you have to make that clear distinction about that. But among the people who you love, who you trust, who have shown up for you, who want to know you, and ultimately, I think we do owe it to the people in our lives who are there for us, show up when it matters, show up when it counts, to let them know who we are, because that's the only way you can really get to that deep, intimate connection of love. I think, often the people who love us, if you keep parts of yourself from them, if you hide, if you disconnect, if you tiptoe around aspects of your identity and personality, you're not only kind of doing the relationship a disservice, you're doing yourself a disservice, because then people will really never actually get to love the real you.
Sure.
I think boundaries are important. I think this is a complicated issue. There are some boundaries that you have to set with some certain people in your life. But if you want to get to that point of like real love, connection, well-being, health, happiness, it doesn't happen alone. It only can happen in community. We are social animals. I think that's kind of a theme of this interview. We are meant to be in tribes. We are meant to be in connection with the people we love, and sex is one of those things that keeps us disconnected often, that we hide and disconnect from people around our lives with. And I think, I never realized this until it happened, and making this movie was a big part of how it happened, of just being open and honest. And like you said, if a topic comes up over coffee, over drinks, over dinner, to actually take that tiny little baby step of courage, bravery, to explain like a story you had in your life, a question you might have, a concern, a fear, and that sparked some real in-depth, loving, hilarious, moving conversations and connections with people in my life. And when you're actually seen for who you are, and the people around you accept, love, lean into that, there is just no greater feeling in the world. To take one of your shames and your fears and the things you think that will make you other, and to actually have the people in your life who matter love, accept, see the difference, and be interested and love you for that difference. I mean, I dare you to feel ashamed or unloved or depressed or anxious in that moment, because I don't think it's possible. And I think if that's what you want in your life, if you're feeling like the people in your life don't love you or know you, understand you, there's a lot of different things outside of sex that you can talk about, but sex is often one of those things where if you can be yourself, again, privacy, boundaries, all things important. I think that's important. The people you choose to talk to, I think, are important. They have to be willing to also be vulnerable and open with you. It's a two-way street.
Exactly.
But if you can find that tribe over your life, and the only way you find that is by being open and vulnerable, it's just so beautiful. And I think the more everyone can kind of take those tiny little baby steps, just like queer people have done, gay people have done, to make the world kind of a little more open and loving and accepting. It's just it's the closest to God I think you can feel. So I think that's kind of my one long rambling kind of sermon about all this, because I think it's just made my life so much more beautiful.
Oh, wow. Okay. Nice. And I also saw like there wasn't like a lot to learn from about sex, and you actually learn about sex from porn, right?
Oh, I mean, I think, don't we all?
Yeah.
Especially gay people. I think gay people. People often. I've talked to a lot of people who are maybe more moderate, conservative. We're very anti-porn, and I get it. Like, I think there's a lot of unethically produced porn. I think a lot of porn perpetuates body image issues, perpetuates kind of degradation, objectification of women in a way that is dehumanizing. But I always go to them and say, porn is the first place in my life where I saw two men have intercourse, and
Yeah.
it wasn't coded in like tragedy or fear. It was coded in like beauty and eroticism, and it was the first time I understood like, oh, there was like this world outside of my world in which men do this, and it's something that's celebrated. There's a lot of issues again with porn, but I think it's kind of a way, in a weird way, it helps you find the community that you're so desperate for as a kid,
Yeah.
because you realize there's this whole world out there of people doing this thing that is so loved and celebrated. They put it on film, So I think porn is one of those things that we've been painting naked people having sex on caves. So it's something that's who we are. We love to see this. It's something to be honored, and I think it's something to be appreciated as an art form. But I think we have to be clear that it's just like any other media you watch. Just like you should not watch the Batman and then go out and start fighting crime as a vigilante. You should not watch porn and then go think you can have sex like they do in porn, right?
Yeah.
It's movie magic. It's a
Yeah.
fantasy. It is not reality. It is not how we should base our sex lives. But because there's so few spaces in which we can actually talk openly, honestly, about what good sex actually looks like, about what good sexual encounters actually are, it's natural that I think young people, because they're not being taught in school, because their parents aren't talking about it, no one's talking about it, they look at porn as the gold standard for a healthy, positive sexual encounter.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be clear that porn is something you'll never be able to get rid of. So the best thing we can do about it is to talk about it and talk about what it is and what it isn't. And I think that would solve a lot of the problems that I even have, that I share with conservatives around the impact of porn on young people.
Okay. And what did you like most about your film, about making your film?
Oh, I think the best part of my film was definitely the two conversations I had with my parents on camera.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I think, there's a lot of great. My conversation with the Catholic priest was amazing. With Christian Gilbert, as you bring up, was amazing. But I think that was like basically like 15 years after I came out, we had that conversation.
Mhm.
And I think we needed the artifice of a documentary film to have a conversation we all wanted to have, but we're still too terrified to have. Right? We needed it to be coded in like work, or coded as like this other thing, that and to actually have a open, honest, vulnerable conversation about what it's like to be in a sexual relationship as a married couple for decades, what it was like to have to be a parent of a child going through puberty.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the shames I had around masturbating, around pornography, a lot of the things I carried with me in my youth, it's so difficult to let go of that shame from youth, and to finally just air everything and get the reaction. Again, kind of like we were talking about, it was like a beautiful moment of connection we've never had in our lives, that we were able to see each other for the full human beings we were, in a way we've never seen each other before, and have a loving, humorous, positive interaction. It just bonded us even more than I thought possible, in a way that I never thought possible. And so I think I didn't go into this thinking I would talk to my parents about sex, but because so many of the people we were talking to just said, like, if you can talk about sex with your parents from an early age, that solves so many of the problems people have later on in life. Your parents are for better or worse, we often see our parents as like godlike figures whose approval means everything to us.
Exactly.
And if you don't have that, then that causes so many problems down the line. And so getting that, even at the age of 36, I'm not to say that we don't have the parent-child issues that most families have. That there are still a lot of tensions and anxieties that will never be resolved because that's just inherent to our relationship. But
Mhm.
this thing that about sex, sexuality, this part that really none of us have an issue with, but we're just conditioned to be afraid to have these conversations. That's been wiped off the table, and so now our relationship is just that much freer, that much more open,
Yeah.
that much more close and bonded. And I think, and it's the scene in the movie that I think gets the biggest laughs and the biggest reactions, because it's a conversation a lot of us could never imagine having, myself included. But it's been a step in my journey, and really just loving who I am as a sexual being, and leaning into it rather than trying to hide, repress, and it's yeah, something that I'm just so grateful that we had the chance to do.
Oh, okay. And like for a young person, like say, a young man or woman, a teenager who's going through this, who don't know who they are yet, but they have a pretty good idea on where they're leaning to. And especially like when you're like you were saying, when you're a teenager, like if you're having sex with a guy, if you're a guy having sex with a guy, or you're masturbating, and after you do that, you feel ashamed and you feel guilt and you don't want to do it again. But of course that doesn't happen because you're in your teenage years, and you want to do that. But like but like for anyone going through those motions, how do you think your film will help help them be more open and not feel ashamed?
Yeah, I mean, I hope when you watch the film, you'll see that the feelings, the shames, the fears that you might have, we all have. It is, I think, so universal. If you grow up in a civilization of any kind, that sexual shame is just inherent in that civilization. And my one advice is, hopefully you can watch the movie and not fall into fear and anger like I did, but fall into kind of fun and play. I think the one message that we get about sex, when you first hear about sex, often from an adult when you're a kid, it's around risk, it's around concern, it's around all the things that can go wrong about sex.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the things that can go wrong about sex are such a small portion of what sex actually is. I just so wish that the first message we heard about sex was all the things that could go right. And all the things that can go right are just so transcendent and beautiful. From masturbation to full-on intercourse, there's a whole range of amazing ways to get to know yourself better, to get to know other people better, to connect in a way that's, dare I say, spiritual, dare I say, kind of, religious almost. And I
Yeah.
think, I think we really do the world, our children, a disservice by not talking over and over and over again about how we have to honor the sexual experience as something that is beautiful, and I think we should talk about the risks. We should talk about there are a lot. It's hard to get sex right. It's hard to be open, honest, vulnerable about it. It's hard to manage the complex emotions that arise, especially when you're young, around sex. But the message should be first and foremost around, especially as a parent, I think should be, I want you to come to me with any questions about how to get this sex thing right.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's hard, it's difficult, and it takes a lot of time. But who else in a child's life is most equipped to do that? I would much rather a parent do that than a teacher or a peer. I think it's something where it's to go back to your question, if you are, I'm hoping that the movie, when you watch the movie, it gives you that little click of feeling safe and loved and as a sexual being, that there are people out there that you maybe haven't met yet who love, honor, and respect who you are as a sexual being, and it's all its beauty. You're not alone. And the one way to get out of that, the one way to is, again, to find those people in your life who you can be open and honest about these things, because that is the only way that you can manage that. And so I think, I'm hoping, again, tiny little baby steps, it took me decades to be comfortable saying I'm gay in public. So I think that but starting as early as possible, to be a little open, honest, and test the waters and find the people who actually respond positively to who you are as a sexual being. The earlier you can start that, just the dividends it'll pay later in life are exponential. So I think, to make a long story longer, that is what I hope the movie does for young people, old people, people in relationship for a long time, just to come out a little bit, because it's, when you really think about it, it's absurd the lengths we go to hide who we are. Yeah. And the payoff you get by being open who you are is just so immense. So I'm hoping the film can help you find that little piece inside of you who's willing to open up in a way that you never have before.
And where can fans watch the film at, and stream it and buy DVD?
Yes. So we are available worldwide, streaming somewhere in the world where you are. You can find us if you just go to asexplanation.com or check out any of our social media handles on all the platforms at A Sexplanation, one word. You'll be able to find all the links to whatever streaming platform in your region. You'll be able to download the film. So we're excited. It's something that it's been a long time coming. So thank you for having us to be able to talk about it. And we hope that you get something out of the film when you see it.
Nice. And what do you like doing during your free time when you're not writing or directing or doing films?
Free time. That's something I know it exists. I know it's out there. But no, I think one of the things that people often, young artists ask me, how do you manage this? How do you deal with this? And it is a sacrifice to be a filmmaker in many ways, because it is all consuming. It's long hours. But I think, of course, watching other art, TV, film is something that really helps energize me, inspires me, gets me kind of my creative juices moving. But, carving out the time in your life to be outside, to, we just moved to this small lake town in upstate New York. And so,
oh, nice.
Yeah. So along the Finger Lakes, so kayaking, hiking, that sort of thing. But I think as I get older, I think if you were asking me 10 years ago, it would be like, go out to the club, dancing, get your dick wet, that kind of thing. But now, it is so much more to me about making time for the people in my life who I love, honor, and just getting to know them that much better. I think, especially this past 2-3 years of disconnection that we've had, where we've had to be isolated. It's just so much more important for me now to actually, kind of like you said, have those conversations, and not just about sex, about everything, getting to know people. And I think, it's those dinner parties, it's those drunken nights, it's those, especially in the summer, it's those connections, making time for the people in your life to get to know them, listen to them, hear who they are, form community in whatever way you can. I think is something that I didn't put enough emphasis on that younger in life, and I think as you get older, it's something that I realize I crave and need. So whatever free time I have, I try to spend in some sort of communal atmosphere.
And I always ask guests this when I have them on the show, because my show is very horror based. do you like horror films? And if you do, what are some horror films you like?
I will say I'm not the biggest horror fan.
Okay.
Yeah. Mostly because, and especially at this time, just, I feel like the stress and anxiety of this time and human history is I gravitate more towards fluff in a way.
Yeah.
But I think, I think, Get Out is kind of like one of those movies where Jordan Peele does amazing work in terms of not only the horror, but kind of like talking about a societal issue in a way that changes the culture. But then there's just, uh your standard, Halloween,
Oh yeah.
Alien, all those, I do really love the Aliens franchise. Those are movies I think that when you do want to see just like movie making at its finest, regardless of the genre, the way that they're able to play with tension, play with that emotion, I think is just everyone can appreciate. So that's kind of where I gravitate towards.
Okay. And are you one to go to Halloween parties and dress up? And
I do like a good Halloween party. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Definitely. Love a theme party. Love a costume party in any way. I think that's another part where, I think sex is so great because it does let you play with identity. It does let you play with different sides of yourself that maybe you don't get to express in your day-to-day that often.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's a great thing about Halloween and costume parties too, is the play aspect. It's the play of putting on a different skin, seeing how it fits, seeing how you like it, seeing how you are different with other people in that skin. That's just something that I think is a great night out.
Oh, definitely. I just hope if someone puts on a Michael Myers mask from Halloween film that they don't feel too comfortable in that.
There is that too. Yes.
And what kind of songs do you like listening to? Like, what's on your playlist?
Probably the album I've listened to the most in the last year is Janelle Monáe's The Dirty Computer. It's just kind of like the way she melds kind of pop and kind of queer activism and queer identity. Again, Lil Nas X, Montero is kind of another in that theme where it's just spoken to me as a queer person trying to navigate through life. I think, for the most part, and any type of disco track in any way is where I am, from old to new.
Nice.
That is kind of the music that makes me feel most alive in many ways. So that's kind of what I am.
Okay. And what would be your go-to karaoke song to sing?
Any Alanis Morissette, I think is a good kind of to belt out let's see. I mean, I tend, because I am an awful singer, I tend to gravitate more towards kind of like the cheesy, kind of the more emotional stuff. So any like Savage Garden, which is like the corniest music ever, is fun to play into. Any boy band from the 90s, 2000s is a good hit, because again, those are not vocally challenging in any way. But yeah, I think that the key to a good karaoke song, especially when you're not a good singer, is you have to be a good actor. You have to play into the performance of the song, and that's how you can get the room on your side.
Okay. And last question is do you prefer the boxer's briefs or Commando?
I prefer Commando, but I understand that is not a smart choice to go out to the world with for many reasons. At home, I think through this movie, I think I mean, let me just look at the poster. I think I've realized I'm much more of a nudist than I realized. It's just so much more comfortable. But that's not the best
Definitely
for many
is.
ways. But I think, yeah, I think a good boxer brief is always a good choice to go out into the world too. It's form fitting, but it isn't too constricting, and it's how I tend to move out in the world. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Uh, I mean, I think I'd like less clothes too,
Yeah.
and so I'm definitely with you on that.
Oh yeah, the first thing that comes off when you walk into a house, pants off. It's just pants off. Yeah.
Exactly. And where can fans find you at?
Yeah. So my personal social is Alexander X Liu. So find me on any of those platforms. I'm trying to be better at social media, so hopefully you can find me there. And yeah, I love to feel free to reach out, DM, all that. I love to have these conversations and stuff. So yeah, I appreciate it.
Awesome, buddy. Well, thank you again so much for taking time out of your day, out of your morning, and coming on the
Oh,
show.
please, thank you for listening, watching, caring. This has been a great conversation. It's just still blowing to my mind that I'm able to have these conversations in life. So I appreciate it so much.
Definitely, bud. Definitely. All right. Thanks again, and definitely have a great a great weekend, whatever you choose to do for the week.
Yeah, you too. And definitely, if you're in Philadelphia, I'm now on the East Coast.
Yeah.
I would love, if you're if I'm ever in your neck of the woods, which might be soon because I have some family I need to check out.
Oh, nice.
Would love to treat you for a drink or anything like
Yeah,
that.
definitely.
Thank you. Because
Definitely.
again, it blows my mind that anyone would care what I have to say. So,
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Whenever you're down in Philly, I'm definitely down for hanging
okay,
out.
great. I love that.
Okay. Sweet.
Great.
All right, bud. Thanks
All right.
again,
Thank
and
you.
have a really good day.
Yeah, you too. Have a good one. Bye.
Okay. Bye.